What if what if everything you think about your brain is completely backward? Like what if your brain doesn't actually create your consciousness at all, but instead it just acts as this biological antenna picking up a signal from somewhere else entirely? Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. I'm your host, and today we're looking at the ultimate prescription for heartache, starting with that massive paradigm shifting question.
And I'm thrilled to be here to unpack it with you. It really is a massive shift because, when you're in the thick of profound grief, it's so tempting to just try and find an easy way around it.
Oh, absolutely.
You see people attempting to bottle up their grief, just packing it down deep, or they try to mask it with superficial escapism like drinking or endless distractions, which are really just temporary band-aids.
Yeah, they don't heal the wound at all. They just delay the pain. But what if there is an actual, defined, almost mechanical formula for navigating heartache? That is exactly what we're exploring today, and I am incredibly proud to announce that this is episode 15, the final installment in our deep dive series on the landmark book, The Power of Positive Thinking.
It's such a profound topic to conclude our series on. Navigating sorrow requires so much more than just generic comfort. It requires a fundamental shift in how we view our own existence.
Yeah.
And that brings us right back to that staggering did you know concept you just mentioned about the brain. After a lifetime of rigorous study, the pioneering psychologist and philosopher William James came to a really shocking conclusion for a man of science.
Wait, really? What did he conclude?
He stated that he was completely satisfied that the human brain is merely a medium for the soul's existence. He called it the transmission theory of consciousness. So he argued that just like a radio doesn't create the music it plays, your brain doesn't create your soul. It merely transmits it into this physical world.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is a beautiful idea. If the brain is just a receiver, like a radio picking up a signal, it implies that the signal itself, the soul, the consciousness, exists entirely independent of the hardware.
Exactly. And think about the implications of that within the framework of this book. It means that our spiritual capacity actually doesn't diminish over time.
It amplifies, right?
Yes, it amplifies here on Earth as we grow in age and experience. We become progressively more conscious of the vast, unseen world all around us. And when the transition of death occurs, it is not an end. The signal doesn't die just because the radio breaks.
That makes perfect sense.
In this view, death is simply a step to enter into an enlarged capacity.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though. That is a fascinating psychological theory and a very comforting cosmic view of eternity. But how does that practically help someone who is hurting right here and now?
That's a very fair question.
Like, if you are listening to us and you are sitting in your car or in your living room, just absolutely crushed by the weight of a recent loss, hearing about enlarged capacities might feel incredibly abstract. How does knowing about the brain as a receiver actually relieve the very real, very heavy physical pain of grief you are feeling today?
That is the essential question, and it transitions us into the core lesson of this entire deep dive. What the author argues is that spiritual power is not just some abstract poetic comfort.
Right, it's not just a pat on the back.
Exactly. In this framework, spiritual power actually follows defined laws, very much like mechanical physics or chemistry. Men discover formulas and harness physical power to do remarkable things in the material world. We understand gravity, we understand thermodynamics.
Sure, we rely on those lies every single day.
Well, the book argues that spiritual power operates with that exact same kind of reliable mechanics.
So, what is the actual mechanism then? If it operates like physics, what is the formula?
The book frames it this way. There is a higher power that is constantly, perpetually available to you. And the law is this. If you are willing to depend upon a strength that you do not possess yourself, if you actively turn your life over to the care of God, as you understand Him, this power will rush in like a mighty tide.
A mighty tide.
Yes. It physically and mentally drives out fear, it washes away weakness, and it scatters moral defeat.
Well, wait, I want to push back on that a little, because if I am listening to this and I have just lost someone I love, hearing just trust a higher power might actually make me angry.
I can totally understand why.
It can sound dismissive, almost like toxic positivity. How does this concept address that completely valid resistance from someone who is actively suffering?
That is a highly perceptive pushback. The distinction here is between passive dismissal and active surrender. The book is not telling you to smile and pretend everything is fine.
Okay, good, because faking it never works.
Right. It is acknowledging a fundamental limitation of human physiological endurance. When you are grieving, you are carrying a psychological load that your body was not built to sustain indefinitely.
That is so true. The physical exhaustion of grief is very real.
It really is. So the argument here is not don't be sad. The argument is that you literally do not have the battery capacity to process this alone. Activating this spiritual law requires an active, conscious choice to transfer the load-bearing weight of your grief to an infrastructure designed to handle it.
That makes a lot more sense. It is not about you trying harder to be strong. It is almost like, well, think about opening the floodgates of a massive dam.
Oh, I like that analogy.
For so long, you are standing there bracing yourself against this giant concrete wall, using all of your own stubborn self-reliance to hold back the immense hydrostatic pressure of your anxiety, your grief, and your fear. You are exhausted. Your muscles are giving out.
You can only hold that back for so long before you break.
Exactly. But the moment you finally stop relying on your own limited strength, the moment you step out of the way and open those floodgates, this massive, limitless reservoir of strength just effortlessly floods your entire system. The water comes rushing through with such incredible force that it scatters all those anxieties.
Yes.
You are no longer generating the power. You are just allowing the power to flow through you.
What is fascinating here is how perfectly that analogy captures the actual mechanics the author is describing. You are removing the barrier of your own ego and self-reliance to let the natural pressure of that spiritual reservoir do the work.
And it takes a lot of work to let go like that.
It does. Mastering these spiritual laws, according to the text, works absolute wonders on human nature. Now, it requires great skill. It takes immense practice to yield that control, to stop bracing against the dam.
Right.
But it can be done. And if we connect this to the bigger picture we discussed earlier, the concept of eternity and the soul as a signal, it changes everything. In this philosophy, eternity does not start with death.
Right.
We are in eternity right now.
We are citizens of eternity today.
Exactly. We merely change the form of the experience called life. When you adopt the mindset that you are already living within this eternal, powerful current, you stop feeling so incredibly fragile and isolated in your temporary sorrow.
I love the idea that we are citizens of eternity right now. But again, theories are great and metaphors about dams are great. I want to bring this right down to the ground floor for you, the listener.
Absolutely. Let's get practical.
If the soul is eternal, and this is ultimately a spiritual issue, why are we talking about physical mechanics? How do you turn this profound spiritual law into a specific, tangible daily action, especially when you feel like you cannot even get out of bed? What is the actual practical step to take today?
The guidance here is exceptionally clear, and it involves a dual action strategy. First, and this is crucial, the book warns that you must avoid the temptation to just sit and brood.
Which is so hard not to do.
Yeah.
It is the hardest thing. When heartache strikes, the natural neurological inclination is to retreat, to isolate, and to let your mind endlessly loop through the pain. But you have to actively fight that urge.
Okay.
You must force yourself into physical activity. Go for a walk, go riding, go swimming, play a sport. Return to the normal course of your life. Take up your old associations or form new ones. Lose yourself in some worthwhile project.
Okay, stop right there. Why? If this is a deep existential sorrow, why is the prescription cardio?
I know, it sounds strange at first.
It really does. How does going for a swim actually fix the radio signal we were talking about earlier?
It is about breaking the physical feedback loop of grief. When you sit and brood, your brain activity actually narrows. You enter a state of rumination where your neural pathways are just firing the same distressing signals over and over again, reinforcing the trauma.
So you just get stuck in a rut.
Exactly. Physical momentum literally breaks mental paralysis. When you force your body to move, to navigate spatial information like walking down a street or swimming across a pool, you are forcing your brain to allocate resources away from the rumination loop and toward motor function and spatial awareness.
Oh, wow.
You are also flooding your system with endorphins and increasing blood flow. You are essentially changing the physical hardware's state so that it can better receive that spiritual signal without all the static of rumination.
That is fascinating. So the physical action is the mechanism for clearing the static. Let me slow down here, though, because you really need to hear this next part. Getting active does not mean you are pretending the pain does not exist.
Not at all.
Right. It does not mean you are faking a smile or burying your feelings, because the second part of this strategy is just as important as the first.
Exactly. The second part of the strategy is giving yourself explicit permission to yield to normal sorrow. Having a good cry is not a sign of weakness.
Which goes against what a lot of people are taught.
It really does, but it's an actual physiological and spiritual release mechanism designed specifically to eliminate the pressure of sorrow. Normal sorrow is a completely natural process.
So you really just have to let it happen.
Yes, to restrain your grief, to inhibit it and bottle it up, is a failure to use one of the very means provided to you for eliminating that immense internal pressure.
Listen to that phrasing, eliminating that immense internal pressure. Your grief should be controlled, but it should never be denied.
That's a great way to put it.
Let me say that again,
Yeah.
because it is the hinge this whole concept swings on. Your grief must be controlled, but never denied. But I want to know the why behind this, too. Why is crying so important mechanically?
It comes down to biochemistry.
Hmm.
When the author was writing this, he framed it as a spiritual release, but modern science has actually proven the exact mechanism he was talking about.
Really? Science back this up.
Yes. Emotional tears, the tears you cry out of grief or frustration, are chemically different from the reflex tears you cry when you chop an onion. Emotional tears contain high concentrations of stress hormones, including cortisol and prolactin.
That is wild.
When you are grieving, your body is overloaded with these stress hormones. So when you cry, you are not just emoting, you are literally, physically excreting the stress hormones out of your body through your tears. You are flushing the toxic buildup from your system.
So bottling it up means you are literally keeping the stress hormones trapped inside your body. That explains why holding back tears physically hurts, why your chest gets tight and your throat aches.
Precisely. That is the hydrostatic pressure on the dam we talked about.
Yeah, that pressure just builds and builds.
And when you combine those two things, when you force physical movement to break the neurological loop, and then you allow a controlled, natural emotional release to expel the cortisol, you are actually doing something incredible. You are priming your mind and your body.
You are clearing out the biological debris so that you can actually receive that rushing tide of spiritual power. You are opening the floodgates.
Exactly.
That completely changes how I view the grieving process. The physical movement and the emotional release create the open channel. And as you clear that channel, according to the book, the deeper remedy for heartache can finally take root.
Yes, because philosophy alone will not ward off the immediate shock and sorrow that comes when a loved one dies. Death is a part of life, and that initial visceral pain is completely unavoidable.
Of course.
But a sound philosophy will lift and dissipate that grief over time. It will fill your mind with a deep, sustaining understanding.
And that brings us to the philosophical anchor of the book's approach. The ultimate prescription for heartache is a sound, unwavering philosophy of life and death, supported by an absolute trust in a higher power.
It is the belief that the universe, guided by that power, is fundamentally inclined toward your ultimate good.
And that perfectly sets up what I think is the absolute anchor of this entire discussion and really the anchor of our whole 15-episode journey. There is a quote from the ancient Greek playwright Euripides that is highlighted in the text, and I wanted to deliver it with the exact weight it deserves.
I love this quote.
Euripides said, "No evil can befall a good man in this life or in the next."
That is such a bold, sweeping statement. If we unpack what Euripides is saying and we tie it back to everything we have explored and the power of positive thinking, it reveals a total shift in how we view our existence.
It really does.
The book suggests that if you live a life filled with gratitude, with faith, with servitude, and aligned with these spiritual tenets, then any change you experience is ultimately part of a larger positive design.
Even death.
Yes, even the profound, terrifying transition of death is simply the act of entering into that enlarged capacity we discussed with William James. The quote challenges the very definition of evil or tragedy, reframing them as temporary shadows in a fundamentally eternal, purposeful existence.
You know, there's another piece of wisdom referenced in the text that echoes that exact sentiment, and it comes from Luke 24:5. It asks, "Why seek ye the living among the dead?"
Such a powerful question.
It is this brilliant reminder to shift our orientation. When we are consumed by heartache, we naturally spend so much time staring into the void, looking backward at what was lost. We ruminate on the past.
We get stuck looking backward.
Exactly. But the prescription here is telling us to look forward, to recognize that life and spiritual energy are continuous, moving ever onward into that enlarged capacity.
This raises an incredibly important question for anyone navigating sorrow right now. Are you looking for peace in the past, which cannot be changed, or are you willing to accept the continuous, eternal nature of life right now?
That's a tough question to face.
It is, and the author points heavily to his own framework, quoting traditional Christian texts to build this case. He points to the book of Isaiah, which says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint.
Wow.
And further, he quotes Matthew, "According to your faith be it unto you."
And within the context of the book, he doesn't just treat those as nice poems, right? He treats them as literal mechanical formulas.
Exactly. Peale presents these as the literal formulas we've been discussing. The book argues that faith is the specific activator for this mechanism. By completely surrendering control to a higher power, however you conceptualize that, you relieve yourself of the impossible burden of managing your grief alone.
You hand over the heavy lifting.
Right. The promise within this philosophy is that the strength is there, waiting for your faith to activate it. The power is there for anybody, under any circumstances or any conditions.
No matter how dark it gets.
There is no situation so dark that this mighty tide cannot reach you, provided you clear the channel and ask for it. So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? I want you to take everything we have unpacked in this final deep dive and apply it directly to whatever hurdle you are facing today.
Whether it's a big hurdle or a small one.
Exactly. Whether you are dealing with a minor, frustrating, everyday stress, or you are in the absolute depths of profound, life-altering heartache, you have a literal, actionable formula at your disposal. You do not have to rely on your own exhausted strength anymore.
You just have to follow the mechanics.
Force yourself into physical action. Move your body to break the mental loop. Allow yourself the natural, healthy, biological release of emotional tears to flush the stress from your system.
Control the grief, but do absolutely not deny it.
And then intentionally turn your life over to a strength that is far greater than your own. Step away from the dam and let the floodgates open.
It really is a universal application. What is so remarkable about this prescription is its total accessibility. You don't need a special environment, a specific amount of money, or a certain level of education to begin.
You just need the willingness.
You just need the willingness to surrender your own stubborn self-reliance and the courage to take that first physical step back into the rhythm of your life. The philosophy here guarantees that the power will meet you exactly where you are the moment you make room for it.
It absolutely will. And as we close out this deep dive and wrap up our journey through the power of positive thinking, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over today.
I love these.
We talked about how spiritual energy might follow mechanical laws exactly the same way gravity does. It is a constant force, always pressing, always available. So if that is true, what incredible unseen forces might completely alter the trajectory of your life tomorrow if you simply found the courage to open the floodgates today?
That's a great thought to leave on.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible 15-episode journey. Remember to like and subscribe to get notified about the next episode, and we will see you on the next deep dive.